have it at 5:45, so I will call this meeting to order. If you'd like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, so we will be beginning our police chief interviews shortly. I would just like to remind everyone that this is a public meeting. However, I would really appreciate it if we didn't speak out of turn, make comments. If we can just all listen to the interviewee, that would be fabulous. So now we wait.
Do we have anything you want to discuss?
I have nothing at the moment, no.
We can take a recess until 6 o'clock. So
Do you have anything you want to discuss?
No, when we doing fire stuff after?
After.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
All
good.
right, well then,
I'll make a motion that we recess for approximately 14 minutes until 6 o'clock.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we will be in recess until 6 o'clock. All right, it is 6 o'clock. This recess is over, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. So we have our first interview of the night, Interim Chief Kevin O'Grady. Welcome. Come have a seat, sir.
Good evening.
We don't bite.
Okay.
Okay. I think Rick is going to start us off.
Good evening, sir. How are
Good evening. Good. How about you?
Hanging in there.
You're hanging in there. How do you think I feel?
you? Sweating. Okay. Can you speak about the, I'm going to jump right into the question.
Okay.
Can you speak about the current police reform bill and the 21st century policing policy within it?
Okay. Well, kind of two-part. The 21st Century Policing Task Force was tasked with trying to come up with ideas on how to look at police reform. They came up with ideas about reviewing policies and procedures as well as training on use of force. They said that those policies and procedures should be transparent. They also said that a post-commission, police officer standard and training organization should be in charge of the training. And they said that the hiring practices need to be reviewed. And they also said that the officers need to have the right tools to do the job. That being said, police reform was signed into law in December of this past year, and we had to jump right into it. We had to deal with our use of force policy as well as our crowd control policy. The use of force had to have a ban on chokeholds. It had to add de-escalation tactics that need to be used when at all feasible. That has to be documented whether you do it or you don't do it. From there, they also added that officers have a duty to intervene, meaning that if you see one of your fellow officers using excessive force, you need to stop them, and that also needs to be reported. So we updated that policy. The crowd control policy needed to have wording regarding de-escalation as well. We don't use any tactics with beanbag guns or anything like that, but the escalation need to be put in place if we had that type of thing in our policy. From there, I actually had to go, there was a federal credentialing, there was an executive order from President Trump that made us, in order to continue having federal grants, you had to apply for this credentialing. So I had to send our policies once the board approved them. We did that back in January. I explained them to the Board of Selectmen back then. They approved them. I applied for that credentialing, and we eventually got it in June. From there, it continued. Officers needed to be certified for July 1st. Everybody's certification basically was just complete your in-service training, make sure all those records were up to date. We do some in-service in-house, and then the state also offered some online. I had to make sure that all the in-house trainings were uploaded into the state website, make sure all the officers were current, which they were. Now we're on to the next phase. Officers need to recertify. That's going to be a big project. The part-time officers have to do a 200-hour bridge academy. It's alphabetical on how they're going to do it. So like A to I, J to P or Q, and then the last bit is every other year. So we have 3 part-timers that are going to need to be recertified through this bridge academy this year, 1 next year, 1 the following year. On top of that, the full-time officers have to be recertified, and with the same criteria with the alphabet. It looks like it's just in service right now, maybe a training or 2, but not sure. They haven't really come out with what they're doing yet. Then, so that's set. Everybody was set for July 1st. July 1st, the Massachusetts Post Commission was created. So now we have to update our internal affairs policy, because that has to read that all complaints on officers need to be forwarded to this post commission within a couple days, within 2 days of receipt. And then from there, there will need to be our internal investigation, and any discipline that's handed down then has to be forwarded to the post commission. They'll review, and they are still the ultimate say. They can say that an officer can remain an officer, or they can take their certification away. That is another part of the post that's going to be happening. They're going to be looking at officers' records and everything else. I can say that we have nothing to worry about here in Granby. Our officers are fine. There's not going to be anybody taking any certifications away. And then they will be looking at adding to our hiring practice. We're just waiting to hear how they want that language, and we'll continue to move forward. So that's where we are with police reform. Oh, back on our use of force policies, we also had to add, you couldn't use fire warning shots. You shouldn't shoot at a moving vehicle unless it's an imminent threat of bodily harm or death. Never shoot at a fleeing vehicle. So all of those were updated. The board looked at those. And then there are some definitions that need to be retweaked that I've been working on to present so we can continue moving forward.
Hey, great. While we're on the topic, can you explain MPPC use of force policy, and how often are your officers trained on that?
Okay, use of force policy is our policy. You're talking the model? Okay,
Yeah, the
that's
model.
like the model?
Yeah.
So the model is the use of force. It's the threat, the perceived threat that an officer feels with what a subject has. Mm-hmm. It starts very low at a compliant person, and a reasonable officer's response would be to have cooperation control. The next level is resistant. You have passive. That would be more of compliance techniques. Then you have active resistant. That is contact controls. And then we go up to assault bodily harm, which is defensive tactics. And then finally, assault bodily harm, death, where you use lethal force. Officers are trained in that at the academies, and just because you start it down low at the compliant, you could get up to lethal force and back and forth. It's a moving scale. So everybody's seen it in the academy, and we've also all seen it probably at least twice a year. It usually happens with firearms, defensive tactics, not defensive tactics, but that model is presented to officers as part of the firearms training, and then always at defensive tactics.
Thank you. What is your experience in developing police department budgets?
Well, this year, over the past 3 or 4 years since I've been a lieutenant, the Chief Wishart, who retired, has had me involved in the budget and overlooking it as he's building it and managing different pieces of it along the way. When he announced his retirement in September, he really turned the reins over to me. He gave me the budget, I was paying the bills, I was doing the payroll, that is as managing it through the rest of the fiscal year. As far as building the budget, he and I worked on that, the fiscal year 2022 budget. We worked together on that. Well, I say together, we actually kind of worked separately and then came back and met. So this budget was one that I designed. You know, I went over it with him afterwards, but we tweaked a couple of things, but I built this entire budget. I've also had experience with different grants we've had along the way where we have to budget that. I've been involved in probably every grant that I've either written, I've written all of the grants that we've had at some point or another, and I've maintained all of them at different levels at different times.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How's that, right?
Yes.
Kevin, good to see you here.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions
Okay.
for you. First of all, what is the biggest challenge that you foresee in this position?
I think to change a little bit. Being a small town, we usually all respond to calls, and it's a little different now that, you know, you really kind of sit back and you let the officers respond to the calls and make sure if they need anything, you're there for them. But I think that's the biggest challenge, is not, usually you hear 911 ring and you're ready to start running out the door, and that's not my job right now. We have officers to do that. I'm there to maintain everything else. So I think challenge-wise, that's probably like the biggest thing I've seen recently. I'm sure we'll see some things that I haven't seen before, but it's been great. Again, I've had great mentors along the way. Chief Wishart was great in allowing me to really run the department for the last few months and look over, you know, he looked over my shoulder if I needed anything, but so I think I've crossed anything I can see, but again, in law enforcement, you can come across anything. So I'm sure there's going to be something that's challenging, but I think the hardest thing right now is realizing the change, that you're not running out on calls all the time. It's
Good, thank you.
yeah.
Next, is there any other information which you want to come to light that may impact the consideration of this board?
No, I think that was one of the questions for the first round, and I told Wayne Wilson at the time, when they did background check on me back in '95 when I came here for the auxiliary, you're going to find the same background. Nothing's changed.
Let me follow up on that too, is that it's interesting, a lot of people that we've asked that question to has thought it as a negative, but how would it be as a positive?
I think as a positive, I've been in town for 25 years. People know me. It's great being in a small town like this. You meet community members all the time. It's a very positive attitude with everyone you speak with. So I think being the fact that I've been in town, I've raised my 2 children, my wife, we've lived here for 27. I've worked here on some capacity for 25. You know people, you watch people grow up. It's funny. When I first started, Bob Ash was an officer with us, and he had 6 kids growing up, and we'd be at charter day, and he'd be picking out different kids, and this one, Mr. Ash, Mr. Ash. How do you know all these people? And then all of a sudden he goes, you'll see. And then all of a sudden my kids are in the school, and all of a sudden you meet all the children and all the family members, and it's a small community is nice. I mean, it's nice to be able to help people out when they're having issues, and it's just good to be able to know people, you're not just staring at somebody having no idea who they are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You good?
I'm done.
It's my turn now. So Kevin, could you please describe your management style regarding the following relationships: town administrator, select board, your employees, and the community?
Management style isn't like, I'm a hands-on, available to everybody. I don't believe in micromanaging, but there's certain things, especially when it comes to the employees, that we have to make sure we do when it comes to people's rights. You know, If we have an arrest during the normal hours, we have to offer them, they have to be to court within a certain period of time. If they're arrested over the weekend and they're held, they have a right to a Jenkins hearing, meaning that within 24 hours, they have to have a hearing to make sure that there's probable cause that they're held and the bail is reasonable. So things like that, I dial in, read the log, and then just send a text to make sure that people are aware of that, what we need to do, and call me if you need anything. Always been available. They know they can call for anything, you know, getting calls in the middle of the night, and we just talk things out. Town administrator, I've been dealing with Chris for 20-something years, I think, at this point, and I think that we have a good working relationship. I can call him and ask him anything, and he gets right, or I email him if it's not, you know, I don't need it right away, and he gets right back to me. I think I'm good with the select board. I've always been available. I try to come to most meetings. I think it's important just to see what is going on. Learn a lot coming to these sometimes. It'd be, you know, I know the Zoom was not a, but it is kind of nice to sit at home and watch on TV and be live and not have to, but, you know, they're informative. There's some things, and then you're just available if all of a sudden something kind of pops up and I can respond to the question. Did I miss anybody?
Employees.
No, he got employees. Community.
Again, always available to the community. One thing I've learned through the years, both chiefs prior to me have always had an open door. You know, there's no hiding. There's no hiding when the public is coming looking for you. It's, you know, it's the small things that people appreciate. You know, I had just had a resident come in the other day that had an issue while he was mowing his lawn that his LTC got destroyed, and he was so upset. But I just, come on in, I took the number from him and we renewed it, and he thought it was great. And it's just being available to people, you know, take the time and talk to them when you're out. If you stop, you know, gassing up a vehicle in town or whatever, people say hi, just be friendly with them, talk to them.
Thank you. So based upon your knowledge of Granby and its demographics, please identify the program areas that you would focus on and how, as a new chief, you would undertake these tasks within the first 6 months.
I would love to see this COVID stuff end. The senior center, we have always had a great relationship with them, and we'd come in and talk to the seniors on different things. We did coffee with a cop. We've done coffee with a cop here at the COA. We've done coffee with a cop over at Dunkin' Donuts, just being available to the public. We haven't had our salt picnic in 2 years. 6 months, I don't think I can get it done before winter, but I definitely want to have that back in progress for June. That is my goal, is to make sure we get that going again, and to be available for whatever we need. I know they're talking about possibly a food truck festival or something at the Dufresne's at some point in October, possibly. We already have arranged, there's the Dino Fest coming up in September. I'm going to have officers there to talk about car seats, as well as the drug addiction response team. We have 2 officers that are available for that. We want to have Narcan available if residents need it for any reason. It's no questions asked, just come and ask for it. So those are important programs that need to be readdressed, and unfortunately COVID has kind of put a kibosh on that for us, unfortunately, for a little bit, but I wanted those to get back up and running as soon as possible.
Thank you. So our last question for you, well, second to last question for you. In Granby, we have a strong chief under Mass General Law.
Mm-hmm.
What is your understanding of that designation as it applies to the police chief?
So what that does is it gives the police the authority. The select board appoints a police department, meaning they have officers and a chief. The chief is put in charge of the daily operations of the department. He's in charge of all the personnel and the equipment. But this is all based on the select board. They are the hiring and firing authority. So with that, the chief is in charge of the personnel and the equipment and gives the assignments. And then and then when policies need to be written, the chief is in charge of writing them, but then he presents them to the select board, and they have 30 days to act on them. If they don't, then they become rule or policy, and if the select board does not, or says no to them, then we have to go back to the drawing board and start over.
Thank you. So my very last question for you is there anything you'd like to share with us that we haven't asked you? It's not mandatory.
No, I think we've covered a lot. I just really enjoy the opportunity I've already had as an interim chief, and I'd like to continue to be your chief. It's a growing experience. It's been wonderful. I have great support behind me. Can't ask for a better crew to work with, and I look forward to the challenge if you choose me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much,
Thank
Chief.
you.
It's 6:19.
Yeah, you can, minutes, what's it, 7? Yeah, we can do that, it's fine.
Want to motion it?
Sure. At this time, I'll make a motion that we recess till our next candidate, which is at 7 PM.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We are in recess. Alrighty, it is 6:33. I'm going to end the recess and call this meeting to order as our next interview has arrived. Hello there, come have a seat. Have a seat.
Have a seat, please. Nice to see you again. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet everybody. Moroney.
Did you have a good ride-in?
Yes.
All right.
Beautiful riding.
Is it easy to find?
Oh, very easy.
Okay, just checking.
I hope so, you've been here before.
Right.
You never know, nerves get in the way.
Yeah, no, I've traveled this road many times, and it's always a nice ride down 202.
Yeah, it is. Alrighty, do we want to jump right in, Rick?
Okay. Keep everything the same. Good evening. Thanks
Good
for
evening.
coming.
Thanks for having me.
We're gonna jump right into the whole thing here. And you might recognize some of these questions are similar to what the search
Okay.
committee asked you, but, okay, the first question I have for you is, can you speak about the police reform bill and the 21st century policing?
Yes. So with the new police reform bill, all the officers are going to be getting certified, which is something Mass chiefs have been pushing for over the years. We'll have officers being certified, and if they become decertified, which means they will not be able to go to another department or another state and continue in law enforcement. They're also looking to make all part-time officers certified, making that jump to a full-time academy, so they're doing a bridge program. Where all officers, to have the certification, you have to have that full-time academy now. So the bridge program is going to make up those hours that officers have that don't get in the current part-time academy. They're also looking to do away with qualified immunity. I know that's still on the table, and from my point of view, I hope that doesn't happen. I think a lot of people are misinformed of what qualified immunity means. It does not give officers carte blanche to do whatever they want. It protects them when they are doing their job and they're found to be doing it within policy and within law. It doesn't mean that they can, like I said, they can do whatever they want and not be civilly sued on it. It just protects them when they are doing their job the way the law intends, that they are protected. With the 21st century policing, that was the task force that President Obama had put together. And they really stressed training, community policing, which the reform is also reiterating that as far as the training goes. The big thing is the community outreach, and we do a lot of it in Gardner. Utilizing the tools that we have to bridge that gap between the police and the community is one of their main pillars in that. And really using media, especially social media nowadays, is huge. It's a great way to put out information to the public show what the department's doing. It also creates transparency, which is a huge part of the reform and the pillars in the 21st century.
Okay, thank you. The second question I have for you, what is your experience developing a police department budget?
My experience currently, I do a lot of our grant writing. I just actually wrote a lengthy grant that's bringing a mental health clinician to the PD, and we're doing a partnership with Haywood Healthcare to get clinicians in the school with a program we've already had established called Handle with Care. That requires budgeting, line items, employee salaries, any added cost, office space, equipment. I'm very familiar with police budgets, line items such as cruiser maintenance, building maintenance, employee, personnel, salaries, unforeseen costs with building maintenance, overtime costs. I'm very familiar with establishing those budgets. Like I said, with the grants that I write, I have to have all that stuff up front prior to submitting them. So I have to account for what we're asking for, how much money we plan on spending for the year as far as the grants go, and what the allotted costs are for the grants. I'm familiar with GRANBY, I believe, has a $1.4 million operating with the police department. And in Gardner, we operate around $2.3 million.
Okay, can you explain the MPTC's use of force policy and how often are your officers trained on it?
Yes, so the use of force policies, we are trained on it, I'd say probably about 4 times a year. We utilize it in our firearms training. We utilize it in our rifle training. We do firearms training twice. We do a live shoot trailer, and then we do our yearly qualification. And we also use it in our taser training. The use of force matrix is basically how an officer is to approach a person based on the perceived threat. The big thing nowadays, and things that I think we've always worked on and Massachusetts has kind of led the way with, is the de-escalation techniques. That's been the huge buzzword lately, but we've always done that in Massachusetts. If you have a person that's just not compliant, you're going to look to talk to them, establish a rapport with them, and have them not escalate to a point where you'd have to go move up the chain or the use of force module. If you're dealing with somebody that's being aggressive or assaultive, that's when you would fall into your other use of force or non-lethal weapons such as taser, baton, OC, with the ultimate if they're trying to harm with the end result of killing you or someone else, you use your lethal force.
You all set, Rick?
Yeah, I'm all set, thank you.
All right. Nick, just thank you again for your interest in the chief position in our town.
Absolutely.
We greatly appreciate the interest that people have shown, so I do want to acknowledge your interest.
I appreciate being given the opportunity.
I do have 2 questions for you. First being, what is the biggest challenge you foresee in this position?
The biggest challenge, being an outsider coming into a community, I think that would be the biggest challenge, building that rapport and earning the trust of the citizens. I had to do the same in Gardner, and the easiest way that I made the challenge approachable was just to be me and be visible, be in the community. I have an open door with Gardner and as the lieutenant's position, and a lot of people have access to me through the community, and I want people to feel comfortable coming to me, and I want them to know that it's not just a job. I'm not just here to collect a paycheck. I am invested in the community that I'm working in.
Next, and again, it's probably, I know it's a question that you heard before from the last interview with the search committee. Is there any information which you may come to light that may impact the consideration for you as chief of police?
Negatively, I don't believe that there's anything out there. I've set myself up in my career to advance. I've done schooling. I've got a master's degree in criminal justice with a concentration on public administration. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice on police administration. I've attended multiple leadership trainings that the FBI offers for executive, command staff, supervisor. When I was appointed to the position of sergeant, I went to a 2-week first-line supervisor school at Roger Williams University down in Rhode Island. I've worked hard to build up my rapport. I take what I do very seriously. I also have fun with this job. I really enjoy it. I don't have anything negative that I can think of that would come to light. Positive stuff, I do a lot of stuff in the community. Most recently, this was actually a busy week for me, and last week we had our second junior police academy in Gardner, which I helped create, and I oversee it. I have some really good officers that work there that have helped me make the program a huge success. And last week we had 11 kids. We ran a full week, 7-hour each day. We had state police helicopters come out. We teamed up with a local gym that did PT with the kids to introduce physical fitness for a lot of them in their lives. This week we had National Night Out last night, which is a huge event for us. We team up with community partners. It's our 8th year doing it. I think last night was probably the biggest one we've had to date. We also did a new program, pool party with the police at our city pool, and we turned it into a water safety day as well. State police dive team came out. We had lifeguards demonstrating water safety, and water safety's been a huge thing over this past summer. Everywhere you look on the state, you're seeing kids drowning, and unfortunately we did lose an officer this year out by us. So we try to bring things to the community that the community needs. That's something that just recently happened, so it wouldn't reflect on my resume or anything like that, but I think you get a lot of that kind of stuff if you dive deep.
Thank you.
You good?
Good.
All right. So it's my turn now.
All right.
So if you could please describe your management style regarding the following relationships: town administrator, select board, employees, and community.
Okay. Town administrator, I'll kind of relate to our mayor. My leadership style and management style has always been kind of a democratic approach to it. I always seek input. I'm always open for input. I don't think anything I think of is the end-all be-all. If somebody sees something that I don't, I'm very open to it, open for collaborations. I have actually a really good relationship with our current mayor. I actually had to work closely with him on this last grant we did because the municipality did have to submit it. So him and I worked very close. He's big, just like I am, with the community stuff. Anytime we can get out in the community and do stuff for the community and bring new things to the city, we're always doing. But that management style is kind of just across the board. Same with city council. City council members have my phone number. They know how to get a hold of me. They know what they need to say and what they need to get across to me. I'm very open to it. Like I said, I don't sit on this high pedestal and try to look down on people. I try to work with everybody, and at the end of the day, we're really just trying to better the community. So I'm always willing to help and do my part, and always willing to get that input. With my superiors, it's the same way. I sit on our command staff. It goes the chief, deputy chief, lieutenant of our detective bureau, and then myself. I oversee community policing. We meet once a week, and we keep the lines of communication open as far as how the department's running, where we foresee some issues, what we can do. It's, again, the egos are kind of checked at the door, and we're looking for that common cause. Better the department, better the community, keep moving forward. We don't want to take any steps back. And it's funny that you kind of asked that question about with my subordinates, because they were saying some things to my mom the other night at the National Night Out, and they said, according to my mother, they said I was very down to earth and kind of an open book, and that's kind of the approach I've always taken. I've had some good supervisors and leaders in my past, and that's kind of where I've molded myself from, taking away the parts that I thought were really good and maybe not doing the stuff that I didn't think was that great. But being a team player, showing them that you're there to support them, giving them the tools they need, not necessarily barking orders at them, hasn't really been my style. Though there does come a time during chaos that you need to do that, and I think the officers understand when that time is necessary. We've had some major events in Gardner. We had a rally last summer with Black Lives Matter, and it went very well. And I relate that to the great relationship our community has with our community members. But that was one of those things that, you saw stuff on the news, and it was always in the back of our heads that it could go south. But based on the relationships we had, it couldn't have gone more perfect than it did. And the relationships we had with the community really showed that night, and it kind of showed our surrounding areas that we've established a communications lines of communication and with the people in our community. They reached out to us, and we made it a joint effort on that rally, and like I said, it was very successful. We had probably over 500 people. We had about 160 law enforcement personnel there, not all out, but in areas in case we were prepared for it. And the officers knew that, if things went south, we would be barking orders at that point. But my management style has always been be transparent, just be yourself, and really just give the officers, give the people what they need, what they expect from you, and just be a genuine person.
Thank you. So based upon your knowledge of Granby and its demographics, please identify the program areas that you would focus on and how, as a new chief, you would undertake these tasks within your first 6 months.
Okay. One of the things that drew me here was a lot of the community policing stuff they do. One of the programs, the SALT program, I thought that was a really cool idea. I've never seen anything like that. That would be a program I would want to continue and expand on that probably a little more. The trick-or-treating events that you guys do is, that's something I've never seen, and I think that's really awesome to have for the kids. I would want to keep those programs going. I'd like to continue a cadet program like I do in Gardner with the summer, do some type of summer camp. I would look to try to establish something like that and get that going in the community. In the first 6 months, just getting out there and exposing myself to the community, giving people the opportunity to see me, and listening to what maybe their needs are and what they feel have been some areas that might need improvement, or something new they might want to see come into the area based on what's been going on. I know mental health is a huge issue. Like I said, we are starting to get a clinician on board with us in Gardner, because we did see an uptick in mental health calls, especially with the last year, with everything everybody went through. So if those needs were here, I would definitely look to write grants for that. There are lots of grants with the Department of Mental Health and Department of Public Health that are available to all communities to help jumpstart those type of programs.
Thank you. So our second to last question. In Granby, we have a strong chief under Massachusetts general law. What is your understanding of that designation as it applies to the police chief?
My understanding with a strong chief is the chief holds a lot of power within the department, making decisions, disciplinary, hiring, and the firing part of the job.
So my last question for you is there anything that you'd like to share with us that we haven't asked?
I know it came up in my first interview, some of the things that weren't on my resume that have happened since then. One of them that I did touch upon with the interview committee was I did receive an award from my department that's voted on by my peers as Officer of the Year for the year of 2020 based on the work that I had done. It was kind of an honor to have my peers vote for me on that and to be given that award. It's a yearly award that we give out every year to one of the officers in the department. And like I said, it's voted on by your peers. And it was quite the honor, and it was interesting because I sit on the committee that recommends it to the chief, so they had to keep it from me. So it was tough for them to do that, because I was kept asking, what are we doing? Our big banquet's coming up and we don't have anybody yet, and they assured me we had somebody, and I hadn't seen any paperwork yet, so eventually they did have to tell me before the banquet, so.
All right, well, thank you.
I do have one question for you folks, if you don't mind. What do you think would be my biggest challenge coming into this community?
What do I think would be your biggest challenge? I'm going to say that you, in my opinion, you probably nailed it with your answer to question 4. Being an outsider and building that rapport with
Yep.
us. It's not a hard challenge.
Right.
But it would be probably your biggest. We do have an amazing department here.
Yes.
So there's,
And-
not really much to work with on improving that side of things.
Right.
But getting known in town would be your biggest.
Because that was one of the things in my first interview was, I've never heard anything negative come out of Granby. And like I said, I've never heard anything negative, so that's always a plus in my book. And your officers should be proud of that as well.
I think they are. Do you have anything?
No, I'd echo what Jen said. The biggest thing would probably just be to get to know the town and,
Yep, absolutely.
the people in the town and your department. I think you spoke of a lot of different things that you do at your current position and the
Yep.
department that you're in. And I think, to me, that the biggest thing, the challenge you would face is just get to know the area, get to know the people,
Yep.
get to know your department.
And I had the same challenge when I transferred from Athol to Gardner. I had the same challenge.
Do you have anything
I
that
have
you think?
nothing else to say.
Thank you.
Well, we thank you. Appreciate you coming in and being interested in this.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
thank you again, Nick. Nice to see you again.
It's an honor for me just to be a finalist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You'll get over when you're over there.
So we chase a lot of kids trying to get those hats. They steal them.
They steal
And
them.
it costs a lot of money to get one. So, that weekend was always a busy weekend going after the kids to get those.
Been doing it for 23 years. so-
You have?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's one thing I miss from working out there in the summer was that weekend was always fun.
Crazy.
It is.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Take care, have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Well then.
They're mostly black.
What?
They're mostly black.
I don't know. All right, does anybody mind if we take a brief recess? So we can-
I don't mind at all.
All right, does somebody want to make a motion? Or I'll make it.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we take a 10-minute
10 minutes,
recess.
fine.
10-minute recess at this time.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty, everyone, it is 7:02. I'm going to end the recess and call this meeting to order. Okay. So we just had 2 very good interviews.
Yeah.
Would you like to start, Rick or Glenn?
I'd be glad to start. I think we had 2 great candidates for this position. And I think you got to see from both candidates the knowledge, the experience that either one of them would bring to this town as chief. So it was nice to see that. And I think they both candidates got their point across very well as to what they thought what they could bring to the town, what they're about, their experience. To me is, you look at both of them, what they talked about, their experience, and again, their knowledge, I think really said a lot for who they are, the police officer that they are, the supervisor they are, the administrator they are. I think that really, I think, they look at their resumes, their interview, I think it really, speaks for itself. I mean, both of them.
Education-wise, we are on par with everybody. With each other, I should say. Rick, do you have anything that you'd like to add before I?
No, I am echoing Glenn's sentiment. They're on par with the education and most of their knowledge is equal. I think we have in my opinion, I think we have one stronger than the other one.
I will agree in
That's
some of the
standing out.
knowledge. We have one stronger candidate than another. All right, let's,
Well, yeah, so I'll just tell you additionally how I feel. I think, like I said, I think they're both definitely qualified candidates. I look at Kevin O'Grady as, someone that's been in town, has I mean, if I had to look at the difference between the two of them, for what I see, is someone that knows the town already, that has been a police officer in the town for many years, knows the community, knows the department. I look at those things there. To me, that it separates them, and it's it may not be a fair separation because one person can have it and the other person can't, because that's just the way it is.
the way it is.
But with that said, I think at this point in time, I think Kevin O'Grady is the right person for our town.
Well, I was very clear when we talked on Monday, was it Monday? When I said that it was no secret that I've supported Kevin, and that unless someone else knocked my socks off, that didn't happen. When, Chief Wishart first let us know that he would be retiring, I had actually had a conversation with Kevin. And it was an honest conversation that I wasn't sure that he would be the person for the job. And he has completely stepped up and I think done everything seamlessly. So I would definitely agree that Kevin would be our best option. He is the best choice for this job. What are your thoughts?
I agree with that. I think Kevin knew a little bit more about the Police Reform Act and the other one, the use of force policy, the triangle. I think he's spot on and all of that, all the way through it. And he's been running the department for the last year and a half alongside of Chief Wishart, but it's the other guy can't do it. I mean, and Nick had some great qualifications and some great answers. I think I want to commend the search committee
did a great job.
giving us two great candidates. But my feeling is I think Kevin was more outstanding than Mr. Moroney.
Okay.
Well, would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that this board appoints Kevin O'Grady as Chief of Police of Granby.
And I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations,
Congrats,
Chief
great.
O'Grady. It's gonna make me cry. All right, not to steal your thunder, Kevin, but we have one last piece of business to do, and that is we need to appoint an interim fire chief. So we had, discussed this last week? Last Friday, and we decided we wanted to sit on it for a weekend and get some information. Have you seen what Lieutenant Brajo brought us? The schedule?
Did you what?
Did you get the information Billy had brought?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And you've seen it?
Yep.
Okay.
So, if I may.
Yeah, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair.
I
So,
talked last.
over the weekend, I had a chance to kind of think about the position, where we are right now, the direction of the fire department.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Hmm?
I just want to stop you for 1 second. You both are aware that Lieutenant Yvonne has withdrawn his letter of interest?
I am aware.
I was not aware of that.
Yes, Lieutenant Yvonne.
Yeah, I didn't see it until today.
Do you want to look at it?
I would, please, yeah.
I've got it on my phone if you want, Chris. Or do you have it with you? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's why I...
Huh?
Check your emails.
Well, I didn't see it today, so.
No, it came in yesterday, I think?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
All right, well, it doesn't change what I thought about over the weekend anyways.
I just wanted to make sure.
No, and I appreciate that. It was more towards the department and positions. And I'd like the board to consider appointing a deputy chief and a chief.
Interim?
Interim. Yeah, an interim deputy chief and an interim chief. I think moving forward, I think, that we've been fortunate over the past year. We had a person leading the department that was a chief for many years, well-qualified, well-experienced in that position. So I really think moving forward, and especially in this interim part, as Jen had mentioned at our last meeting, this could last up to 6 months possibly, if not longer. So with that said, I kind of thought about it and thinking that if we had two people in charge of the department, really one person, but two people working together to run a department, and also thinking about the aspect of the department where it's just not a full-time department. We have our call people as well, and to kind of look at both pieces there. So I'd like the board to consider, appointing again, an interim deputy chief and an interim chief for the period until.
Prerequisite that we talked about?
Most definitely, yep, and the same thing would follow through with one thing with budgets. They wouldn't be allowed to make any
Promotional.
any unnecessary
Structural
large, purchases or just with according to the budget, which would have to be approved through either us as the select board or going through the town administrator, who kind of really knows our budget for the town. That's one thing there. I think that's important that we stay true to that. Also, we talked about, as far as promotions, that there would be no promotions made unless approved by the select board. And that's one of the kind of reasons I looking at a rank structure, going again from just an interim chief down to lieutenants. So I'm thinking that, if we had an interim chief, interim deputy chief, we kind of solidify the leadership of the fire department at that time. And that's two people that can work together, and hopefully for the common goal to really get the department running, continue to run the way I think it's been over the past year with our previous chief.
Well, I think everybody I talked to on the fire department know I had a problem with there's a lot of Indians and not enough chiefs, and I was always concerned about who's in charge. I have on scene with the amount of lieutenants they had. So I kind of agree with that policy.
I think
Yeah.
starting
If we
a
have interim chief
structure is
and
a good
an
idea.
interim deputy. And then when we hire a full-time, I think, if they want to keep
They can be
them on as a
reassessed.
deputy.
I think we have a
Captain or
full-time,
something.
we appoint a full-time chief or hire a full-time chief. At
Then they
that
can
time, it's
decide
that
rank
person's,
structure. They can assess.
his or her decision to decide how they want their rank structure to be. Like I said, to me, it'd be the same thing with the interim deputy chief and the interim chief, as, with the understanding that they resign at the time that a new chief is appointed.
Yeah, that would be.
And that would be part of the contracts.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem with that either. Do we want to do it in one motion or in two?
No, I think if we're fine with it, we just gotta decide who we want in those positions.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. Do we want to make a motion for chief? For
Well, I think we
interim chief
start,
and then for deputy chief?
I think we start
Or do
off
you
with deputy chief and
So
then
you
move
wanna
on to
do
the
them
chief.
separate?
Yeah,
Okay.
separate. Yeah.
Well, I move that we appoint Lieutenant Tyler Yvonne as deputy chief.
Right.
I know he has, taken his letter of interest in for interim chief, but in talking to him, the timing is just not right for him. However, I think he would be a very good asset to the department in that role. So I think deputy chief would be appropriate.
So, okay, not to interrupt, that's your motion, I also want to put another motion on the table too.
It's fine.
And I was looking at William Bragel, and the reason being, I talked about the call force. And I want that we have someone that represents the call force and someone that represents the full entire department as chief. So I'd like to have someone in there that has that input for the call force as well as the input for, them working together, the full-time firefighters and the call firefighters working together, and someone to bridge that gap and bringing that together. I know some of the people that I've talked to over the recent week or so, had some concerns as far as, that's always been, how do we bring that together? So I'd like to, that was the thought process I had, and that's based on Mr. Bragel's quick interview, I would say, that we gave him, impromptu interview last Friday. I liked a lot of things that he was saying in regards to the call piece. So that, coming into this meeting, that was my thought process. And, unfortunately, I didn't know, Tyler Yvonne was not considering himself for chief. And, as a board member, I can tell you I am a little disappointed in that piece.
I had that conversation with him,
so-
but I do understand, and
Yeah, well,
I have to say,
I absolutely respect
the fact that
anybody's
Yep.
decision on whatever the reasons would be. I completely respect that without a doubt,
Yep.
so.
After being down there a couple of times and talking to several of the lieutenants, in the respect they had for Tyler, I understand and I respect his decision for sending that, and he's not ready for it. I understand that, but I think that appointing him as an intern deputy chief would be the right step right now. I know he has respect to most of his officers in there.
call force and full-time.
And I understand where you're going, but I think his attitude when I talked to him was he wants to increase the call force.
Right, so those conversations that you had are outside of what I'm not.
Yeah, it was when I was a liaison
Yeah,
officer.
no, I get that, and Jen had said
Yeah.
she had spoken to him, so I don't have that information, so
Yeah.
I can't speak to that. I'm basing it on the information that I have with that, and I'll be honest, I have concerns if Tyler's not ready to be chief, and again, I don't know the reason, so I don't have that benefit
It's
to
mainly the
ask him.
time commitment.
Okay, so with the time commitment, and does that time commitment fall into, again, as deputy chief? I look at deputy chief and the chief really working together, really, someone that's gonna bridge this gap for the next 6 months until we have,
Or shorter.
or shorter,
Shorter.
but that it's possible, or longer. Hopefully it's not.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I did say 3 months, and people were quick to,
Quick to jump
slap me
on
on my back of my hand, telling me, no, it's probably more like 6 months. But with that said, I mean, that's, and it's, again, and I struggle with that right now, without having the opportunity to really sit down and talk to Tyler about it, or his letter right here. And again, I think that speaks for itself. But again, the other time and commitment to dedicate to a deputy chief as well, because I'm looking for someone that's gonna be, all in, and that's kind of the feeling I got from Mr. Bajo when he was talking, about that piece being all in, giving it 100% and making a difference for the department, so.
That time commitment is somewhat of my hesitation for, the schedule that was given to us does not really allocate a lot of time to the department. And I think right now we need that time. So that would be one of my hesitations. If it was a different schedule, if we were able to have, 20 hours, 25 hours a week, that would be a different story, but we're not at that point.
Well, and again, I think that schedule was referenced into chief, not deputy chief, but again, it's the same, like I said, I want the people that are committed to the position, that's all. And like I said, I just basing on what he said to us, and I listened to a lot about the call force and his years' experience, I think 30 years with the department, and knowing the department and working with many different chiefs throughout it.
impressive.
So, that's just my opinion. And, like I said, so, I mean, each of us have our own thoughts, and opinions, so that's fine. But moving forward, that would be my suggestion as deputy chief. I think, just looking at the piece, again, I look at what I said earlier, just regards to the call force and bridging that gap.
It's definitely something to think about, is bridging that gap. I do think that Tyler, as deputy, would be able to do that. And I know you haven't spoken to him, but I encourage you to. He has some amazing ideas.
I understand that, but I need to make that decision tonight.
No, I know you do.
And it's not.
I know you do. So so there's already a motion on the table let's deal with that first. Does that sound good?
That's fine.
All right, so would you like me to make the motion again, or do you remember what it was?
You made the motion.
I made the motion. I'm saying, do you want me to make it again, or do you remember what it
Yes.
was?
Yeah.
Yes, you remember, or yes, make it
No,
again?
make it again.
I move that the board appoints Lieutenant Tyler Yvonne as interim deputy chief.
And I
Yeah.
will second that.
Is there any discussion,
I just.
other than what we've already had?
Not what we have, but I would make sure that this is something that Tyler wants. He's
Oh, he's here.
submitted a
He's
letter.
He's here, we can ask
Where?
him.
Tyler,
Tyler?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you left.
He did.
Oh,
Alan's hiding people.
Tan, I apologize, I'm talking like you weren't even here, and I apologize. I thought you left. I thought I saw you walk out for some reason.
So what are your feelings on interim deputy chief?
Tyler, why don't you come forward
You
so we
come
can be
forward.
recorded?
Yeah.
I know when we discussed it yesterday, interim chief wasn't really in the
Yeah.
right time for you
I mean,
right
that's
now.
a massive time commitment.
Yeah.
24/7. Basically what I do is close to that, but I don't want to commit to something that I have questions over, So that's why I withdrew.
Yeah, I
All right.
completely respect that.
And there was some other reasons why, but I think a deputy position is more of, the job that fits me best.
And you can make the commitment that Glenn was talking about for it.
Yeah, I mean, like today, it's my day off. I've been at the station twice already, all right? And that's normal for me. I'm always around. I take calls from call force members, full-time members. If they have questions, I answer them. If there's issues, I deal with them. If there's things that need to happen, I take care of it. So, I mean, I'm not unreachable. It's just, I don't want to commit to something that's more than what I'm comfortable with right now in my life.
That's fair.
Understood.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
No, thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we've dealt with the interim deputy chief. Now let's move on to our interim chief, fire chief. Who would like to start that discussion off?
Again, I think we have well-qualified people for the position. I think, what we have for candidates, I think any one of them could do a good job at it, without a doubt. I can stress for Bill Ragel, just based on, his time and experience. But also, with that said, I like someone who is chief that is a full-time firefighter.
I
And
agree with that.
doesn't take anything away from the call force at all. But I definitely would, again, I definitely would consider, Bill Ragel for that position. And I know we are, as well as the other ones, so. I'm torn, really, to look at the candidates that we have. I think they all could do the job, qualified for it.
The candidates that we have do make it a difficult
Yeah.
decision, yes.
And like I said, I'm just looking for, again, that team that's gonna get us over that bridge, if you will, to our next, permanent chief.
I'm looking at someone who can work with everybody to repair some of the damage that's been done and the toxicity that was over there. I mean, it's lessening, it really is. But we are going to need someone, even in the short term, because I'm worried about what quality of candidates we will get if we don't start trending in an upward direction. That makes sense?
I think the fire department was in the right direction the past year.
It
with
is.
the leadership that we had
It is, but
there.
we've been in the negative news for so long. I want us to get into the positive news.
Yeah. Well,
I want us to make the front page for something positive.
yeah. As long as we're not in the newspaper, I think we're good.
Yeah. You're gonna be on it.
We're gonna be on the newspaper regardless.
No, but you know what I mean. You know,
Yes,
it's
yeah.
it's
As long
not
as
the
it's in a good light,
negativity,
not
and
bad, yeah.
you know, I know it came up before. I forget, it was actually at some time ago at a board meeting that someone had mentioned. You know, they worked for another department outside our state that actually heard what was going on in that department. So, kind of going back to what you're talking about, Jen. But again, that's the past. We're moving forward. I think we had a good person in place for the past year or so, a little under a year. I think the chief did a nice job bringing us to where we need to be. Again, I think at this point in time, we need to find the team that we can bridge the gap to get to our permit chief. So,
Well, after looking at some of the resumes, I have two of the candidates that I would support, and one of them would be Michelin Turgeon and Gene Noss. So my pick would be one of those two
yeah.
to step forward.
Yeah. I
I
can,
think they both have respect for each other, and Tyler and the other department members, I think, would step up.
yeah. I mean, those are our other two candidates out of the three that we just mentioned, and I would agree. You know, I think, you know, yeah, I think with Gene is our next senior full-time lieutenant in the department.
Yeah, he runs the EMS, he has all the 100, 200, 300, so on and so forth on it.
Yeah.
And Michelin's the same way. She's worked at Westfield PD for,
FD.
oh, sorry, yeah, FD, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, for 20 plus years before she came back to her hometown. I'm okay with either one of them. I'm leaning more towards Mish than I am Gene, but it's no specifics involved on it.
I mean, and I'm there with you, Rick.
Yeah.
I'm leaning a little bit the other way, and the only reason being because Gene's been a supervisor in our department.
Yeah.
So, you know, as lieutenant for many years, and you know, we looked at you know, Tyler before as being the senior lieutenant. So he was in charge for the past, you know, weekend, I guess, to look at it. But again, where I think someone seniority in the department, someone's rank within the department needs to be considered. And that's what I'm considering, that piece there, is, you know, to separate the two of them. And again, these aren't easy decisions
No.
by any
No.
means. You know, but if I look at it, again, that's how I look at it, we're just separate someone with the experience, the time of service, and rank within our department.
Madam Chairman, do you have an opinion?
I have lots of opinions. So I agree that rank plays a very large part in things like this. In this instance, I don't necessarily know that it needs to. I think time should factor in as well. In terms of who I would prefer out of those two, and it is a very difficult choice. You know, with Lieutenant Oz, we have worked with him before when we do HIPAA, things like that, and I don't notice changes happening in things that we've asked for. We're still missing information in some of that. I'm more inclined, and I understand that there is good and bad about both candidates. There always will be. But when I sit here and I think about it, I am more inclined to lean towards Micheline. And I'm not saying that I am making, that I have the right choices, that I'm making, but that's where I feel that I need to go.
I think there's one thing we gotta consider, we've gotta remember, it's just the interim
interim.
process until we
Correct, it's just
interview
nothing
for
permanent,
the chief.
and
It doesn't mean
this doesn't
he or she
guarantee
is gonna be.
that anybody will be chief.
No, it does not, but, and as I said earlier, we started discussing it, it's an important time to bridge that piece from just the chief we just had outgoing to our next chief, and I think, if it's 3 months, 6 months, a lot can happen. I've seen a lot happen in that fire department.
Yes.
In 6 months. And to me, I want to make sure that it continues to move.
You talking the past 6 months or the?
No.
Way back.
Not way back, but a couple years ago,
Okay.
or several years ago, where I could see a lot of things that were going on in that department, where the select board had met with the fire department, the firefighters, in regards to some of the concerns and issues that they were having at that time. So with that said,
Were those issues addressed?
yes, they were.
So do you have a feeling there's still something's going on?
No, I don't.
Okay.
The point I'm making is that I want to make sure that, to me, again, is that we bridge that gap successfully from this point to the next point.
I 100%
And,
agree with that.
again, and the only reason I mentioned, and I'll be honest, looking at the two candidates, to me, and I know I said earlier it would be Gene Haas. But again, it's just based on his experience, based on his rank. He has that supervision in our department already. So he's already had that with the department. Nothing against Micheline, because I think, again, same thing as the both of you said. He is a great candidate, without a doubt. But again, I just, I don't know her ability for supervision. I know she was, I believe, a lieutenant in the Westfield Fire Department, but I don't know a lot about that. So it's hard for, And again, this is
There's your rank that you're looking for.
it's not rank, rank is one of it, but I look with rank, with rank comes a supervisor and supervision of people.
Yeah.
So that's really what I'm looking at, and that's, to me, that's what's important. Again, I looked at that, just talking about Tyler as a deputy chief, talking about William Bragel as a deputy chief. With that, time comes experience and things like that as supervision, so that's where I am with that. To me, if I had to separate the two, that's what I look at, so. I know with that said, and I know we kind of got to move forward, we have to vote on this, so.
We have to make a decision.
Yeah. I would make a motion that Gene Haas be the next interim chief for the town of Granby.
Is there a second? No second. Is there another motion?
I would like to make a motion for Micheline.
To be?
Micheline Turgeon to be the next interim fire chief.
Is there a second? I'll second that. Is there any further discussion?
No,
This has not been an easy decision.
absolutely not.
And I don't want any of those candidates to feel that they did not deserve it, because they are all equally deserving of it. But that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
So, congratulations to Micheline Turgeon. She will be our new interim fire chief.
Okay. Before we move forward, a motion on what is going to be allowed by that interim chief and interim deputy chief.
Okay, so you said it very well before, so why don't you motion it? Why don't you move
It's,
it? Do you remember what you said?
Somewhat.
You said it very well.
I'm going to make a motion that our interim chief and interim deputy chief do not have the ability, or has the ability to promote. However, that promotion needs to be approved by the select board. So either the deputy chief or the interim deputy chief, interim chief can make a recommendation to this board to promote someone. However, this board would say yes or no to that promotion. And again, I think at any, and this is any promotion that's made that this board may decide to say yes or no to, or say yes to, that is temporary until a new chief comes in. Because as I said in our last, I'm going to get off track a little bit here, but I said our last meeting that I strongly believe our new chief should have the ability to choose a deputy chief and his rank structure for his department or her department at that point. So that's one. Secondly, their interim chief or deputy chief does not have the ability to make any major purchases outside the budget or in the budget without the approval from the select board or with review with the town administrator. Yeah. And there was a third.
They would resign upon.
Yes, and in the contract for the interim chief and interim deputy chief, it will state that they will resign or submit a resignation to the select board on the appointment of a new chief, fire chief.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion on this?
Yes, I want to address, we use Micheline's, her first name, her Officer Turgeon.
Yes, sorry.
Micheline Turgeon, I don't think we should be that informal.
I went to school with her.
Okay,
All
just for the
right.
record.
So noted, and you are correct in that. So that being said, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right.
So, given that has concluded our business for the afternoon, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
And I will say all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.